What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to our channel. This is Trevino, and we are back with a wonderful guest in beautiful Houston, Texas. We are with Joseph Soulamon. How you doing today?
Good, Aaron. How are you doing?
I'm just fine. I know it's been a while in the making, and it's great to see you. And I'm glad we can connect today.
Yes, sir. Glad to be here.
Yeah, absolutely, Joseph. So for those of us who aren't too familiar with you, would you introduce yourself, please?
Yes, I'm Joseph Soulamon. I am an independent broker with NEXA Mortgage. They're a company headquartered in Arizona, and they've been around since 2017. And at the moment, they have such momentum. They're actually one of the fastest growing mortgage companies in America. We have about 1,600 plus mortgage brokers nationwide, and I'm one of those.
All right, very good. And I'm curious as well. The term mortgage broker, these different terms get thrown around. Could you maybe explain the difference between a mortgage banker and a mortgage broker?
Yeah, good question. So the main difference, I would say, comes down to product availability, right? So you go down to your local, Bank of America or Chase, whatever, and say, hey, I want a loan for, a house. They're going to give you the standard product, selections, FHA, VA, USDA, which a lot of people have access to. Whereas a broker not only has access to all those traditional programs, but a plethora of others. So let's say you're independent rep, like your sales rep, you might be, for instance, 1099. So your qualifications for a loan may differ from an average borrower. So you might need a different product to suit your needs. So a broker typically has access to a lot more lenders and a lot more products to suit the needs of a host of different borrowers in their situations.
Yeah, I can see that makes a lot of sense, especially, when maybe you're in the market for the first time, and, that just knowing you have those options for those products, that can be crucial.
It definitely can. And to that point, a lot of realtors who deal with clients who might have lenders they're really familiar with, they may take them to a bank or even just another broker. But just because they're a broker doesn't mean they have the access to a variety of products. So they may be turning potential applicants away because they can't find a product that fits their client's needs. And I can often step in and approach that realtor and say, hey, listen, give me the list of clients you had to turn away in the last year, and let's go ahead and see if we can requalify these people, based upon our diverse selection of products. Right. So, I mean, it's an interesting time we're living in right now. As you know, the housing market, a lot of people cannot necessarily afford the homes because they're so inflated in value. But, once it comes down to some normalcy, a lot more people will be back in the marketplace looking for homes. So they're going to need a lot of options at their disposal.
Yeah, absolutely. I guess like anyone else, I wish I had a crystal ball, but only time will tell, right?
Only time will tell. Well, I mean, the thing we know for sure about the financial industry and all aspects is that it's cyclical, right? So what happened in 07, 08 with the housing crisis, people say, oh, we're back in those same waters. We were kind of wallowing in those waters a bit as far as making some of the same mistakes, but there's no way we're heading down that same path. No one wants to go down that same road again. Some of the red flags went off, but we had all the safeguards in place from that crisis to make sure it didn't happen again. And thankfully, we're not even close to going down that road again. But the housing market does need some correcting without question.
Sure, absolutely. And it's tough to, I mean, mind you, I was in high school in 2008, so.
Okay.
I'll admit, I can't say I was working in the industry back then, but it's interesting kind of hearing people who've they went through that storm and kind of hearing maybe some similarities and some differences between then and now.
Yeah. Well, you were in high school. Did you know any of your classmates whose families were affected by that crisis, like losing their homes and such?
Frankly, I don't really remember people losing homes. I do remember, families kind of having to strap down a little bit, maybe being a bit more careful with how they spend money, vacations, keeping it close to home during the summers, things like that. But
Okay.
I don't
Good.
know. I think that I don't want to say recession proof, but I don't think that my part of Texas, I guess South Texas, was as effective maybe as other states were.
Yeah, you're right. I mean, Texas is very unique in that respect. It's almost its own little financial bubble, which is good and bad in some regards, right? But I think a lot of people were protected here from the housing crisis, because everything is kind of reasonably priced, right?
Sure, no, absolutely. And I'm curious about you as well, Joseph. I guess speaking of other states and other parts of the country,
Yeah.
I know we talked a little bit before, and you're not from the Houston area. If you don't mind, could you talk a bit about your background and what you did before the mortgage industry?
Sure. So I grew up in the DC metro area, specifically a place called Alexandria, Virginia, which is literally right outside of DC. It's akin to Katy, Texas to downtown Houston, right? Um, matriculated high school through there, went off to college to Atlanta, graduated down there at a place called Morehouse College, and came back to DC to start after um, I attended a massage therapy school. So that was my very first profession coming out of college, was a professional massage therapist. That was back in '96. So I'm dating myself a little bit.
Yeah.
So for the past 26 years, I've been a licensed, muscle therapist is the technical name for it, and been helping people, right? I've been servicing people in a healthcare capacity as a professional, helping them feel better, helping them get better range of motion, out of pain. The list goes on and on. So my background is in helping and supporting people, and also teaching people, because I have also, during halfway through my career, I got into the teaching aspect of muscle therapy and teaching people how to become, professionals in that field. So I have a teaching background as well. So as I've gotten older and more distinguished in my profession as a muscle therapist, I figured for the second half of my life, if you will, I'm going to invest into a new career. And I just naturally segued into the mortgage industry by way of some friends who were already in it. And they kind of invited me in, and I kind of got familiar with the process of what it was all about. And it just made sense for me to kind of make that transition so I can get into the financial aspect of helping people, which can often be very, very murky and troubling. It's confusing to some people, right? And rightfully so, because people make it confusing. There's very little clarity around financial decisions in our society, especially financial products. So I came in this industry with the hopes of shedding light on a lot of things that are in the dark when it comes to mortgage, and making people understand that, hey, it's not something to be afraid of. And oftentimes you're probably more prepared for a mortgage than you think you actually are, when you start not paying attention to all the stuff that's on the news and what have you. So, I consider myself more like a, mortgage coach and mortgage advisor in this regard, because I really want to make sure people understand what they're getting into and what their options are, most importantly.
Sure, absolutely. And I find that so interesting. Not only your transition into the mortgage industry, but being in a previous industry for such a long period of time.
Yeah.
Maybe what would you say to somebody who is maybe looking to make a transition into a different industry from what they're normally comfortable with?
Good question. Well, number one, look at your current skills, your strengths and weaknesses, and understand that most skills are transferable, right? Like in regards to me, in my industry, communication is going to be at the heart of that, right? And a lot of the, mortgage brokers I've talked to, clients I've talked to, and even realtors I've talked to over the past several months of being in this industry, that's usually the top 3 complaints that they get from about mortgage brokers, quote unquote lenders, is that the communication is horrible. It's inconsistent, it's not regular, it's not thorough. So making the transition, knowing that you have transferable skills, right? Communication is one of them. Professionalism is definitely one of them. Timeliness, courtesy, just the kind of run of the mill stuff you're already kind of familiar with, Aaron. And then when it gets down to the nitty gritty of learning, just think of yourself as a perpetual student. Like, if I'm going to get good at this particular new profession, I need to, buckle down and read, learn, and be receptive to learning from others who have more experience than me, right? Like, you have to kind of go back into being, all right, now I'm going to be a true student and just absorb what people are telling me and learn from their wisdom, you know?
Yeah, and you made a really interesting point. It's kind of this dance between you having to be the teacher, the student. You're the teacher, you're the student, right? So it's kind of cool seeing how you're able to kind of take that educator and teaching role while at the same time remaining humble and knowing, hey, this is my time to be a student.
Yes, you have to be able to know which hat to put on to make life a little easier for you, you know?
Yeah, no, absolutely, Joseph. And you brought up an interesting point as well about maybe some misconceptions that people have about the industry. You mentioned kind of maybe they're not familiar with the terms, or things can get confusing, you're left in the dark. Maybe someone's looking to get a mortgage for the first time, or really just educate themselves on these sorts of financial matters. Where do you start?
Well, you start, I think the first place to really start, Aaron, is with self-inventory, right? You have to know what your own personal and household budget is, first and foremost. I mean, just get a basic spreadsheet, know what's coming in, know what's going out. That's where you start, because that's gonna be one of the first questions that any, broker asks you, or any lender asks you. They want to know what your finances are. So you need to be, first and foremost, very aware of your finances, very astutely, keenly aware of where your financial situation is. How much debt am I carrying? What charge-offs or collections I might have. Where's my credit score, right? A lot of those things you can get, especially credit reports, you can get those free annually every year. Many people don't even take advantage of those, so they're clueless as to what is even on their credit reports, right? And that's fine. You don't really necessarily need to know exactly where it is if you're not shopping for lines of credit, right? Mortgage is just a line of credit, really, like anything else. So know where your financial situation is, and then start doing a little research online through the major, what I call the major hubs, HUD, right? USDA, FDA, VA, depending upon your status. Just understand those basic, what I call the core products, because a lot of people fall under that umbrella for the most part, unless you're a non-traditional borrower, meaning you might be 1099, self-employed, or you might be a non-resident alien or something like that, right? So do your own due diligence on those websites, so you can actually then ask those poignant questions to your mortgage broker. Okay, so be as informed as possible coming into the situation.
Sure thing. And that's a very important thing to mention, as well as your baseline, right? Where do you start? Kind of taking inventory of, hey, this is where I'm at, this is where I want to be. How will the mortgage help me get there?
Right. Yep.
Absolutely. So then, what's next? You take that self, or I guess that self inventory. You kind of know, hey, I have X amount of dollars in cash. My husband, my wife, they can pitch in. They can do X, Y, and Z. We qualify for this. What's after the self inventory?
Sparking up a comments. Interview your mortgage brokers. Right. Call me. Call a few others, and find out how well you gel with them, because ultimately it's going to be not just a temporary relationship. Once you get the keys to your home, for me the relationship's not over. I'm going to stay in touch, because I want that to be just one of not just many transactions for you, but also for your family and friend, your extended network. So make sure you have a good rapport relationship with that person you're going to decide to make this purchase with. I'm one of those people. Of course, the realtor is one of those people. Interview those folks and just make sure they're good people. They're upstanding people. They have a solid reputation, they have integrity. Those things hold a lot of value. And when sometimes we're not prone to even ask those questions, it's almost like we don't want to offend anybody, right? But you can ask those questions in a way that's not offensive. You can just get a sense of someone's character based upon how they answer the questions, right? So once you in the interview process, ask those poignant questions to figure out what their character is, and then ask them, specifically about, what they do qualify for. So I can just do a basic, income analysis and figure out, okay, what are you currently paying for your rent, and how much above that rent can you afford to pay to be able to get into a mortgage, right? So, and that's where the honest conversations start to happen. And then you start to really realize, what your financial situation is, because the general theory is that if you're already renting, right, you get into a mortgage, you should be saving money, right, long term, because you're investing, in your equity of your home. But sometimes you might jump from, rent that's, amenable to your budget, but then the mortgage actually might be a little bit more because you have to, factor in interest, taxes, and insurance and stuff, right? So those are easily discernible though through just using like products like a mortgage calculator. You can kind of figure out those numbers. So, treat it as an interview, right? So when you start getting on the phone with people, just ask them those pointed questions so you understand that this is someone I want to, be in a relationship with, a business relationship with.
Sure thing. And, you brought up a neat point about the buy versus rent situation, right? Whether, anybody from any walk of life can find themselves asking themselves that question, right? Hey, should I buy or should I rent?
Right. That's a big question, especially now with rents, going through the roof, man.
Yeah.
And that we might have to take a page from yesteryear where, hey, I might want to purchase a home and to save money and also to start building equity and, creating an investment for my family, an asset. So let me think of this maybe from a cooperative standpoint and get other interested people in this. So if you're a single guy, ask your girlfriend or your wife, if you're married, or your husband, vice versa, family, fathers, aunts, uncles, get them involved in the process so they can lend support or even actually be on the application with you. Because it is really a family asset, something that can be, bequeathed and you can inherit it from other people. So it's something that you have to look at it from that perspective. It's an investment vehicle, a home. So get other people involved in that process and maybe attack it from a cooperative standpoint. Maybe use individual might only qualify for, $250,000 home, but you add one more person on the application, like your father or your aunt or whoever, now it might be 400,000, right? You both have a nice asset that you can build and grow.
That's right. And that's a neat perspective shift there, right? Because a lot of people, buying a house is a major life decision, right? And a lot of times maybe people aren't open to, the generation to come, right? Who else can get on in on this with me, this being a family thing, not just a me thing.
That's right. Well, that's my tagline when of my email and just my business is, it's building, generational wealth through real estate, through home ownership, right? So this is a generational wealth building vehicle and tool, and we have to treat it as such. So it should be as cooperative as we can make it with family and extended friends and family.
That's right. Absolutely. And, thank you. You did a great job, really laying out those steps, kind of understanding your baseline, where to start, making sure, the family's on board and kind of, you having that self-awareness. And I'm curious as well, you're here, as well as me in the Houston area. Just to get your opinion, what's unique about working and living in the city of Houston and doing real estate here?
Wow, it's I mean, it's literally one of the fastest growing cities in America, right? I can't remember the exact statistics as far as where we rank, but I know we're in the top 5 as far as urban cities, right? Compared to, like, New York and LA and Chicago and stuff. Our population is just exploding, and we're attracting people from all those cities I just mentioned for number one reason is just better cost of living. Like, your dollar just stretches a lot longer in a place like Houston than it does a place like LA or New York or Chicago or even DC for that matter. Your dollar goes a long way. You can get more house for your money, and there's a lot of job opportunities down here, and even business opportunities if you're an entrepreneur or business owner. It's a very business friendly state as a whole, and Houston specifically is a very business friendly city. I mean, you've been here for however long. You can go down any street, any major artery in Houston, and in any given block, you can see, umpteen food trucks or food stands set up. I mean, that's just entrepreneurship 101 to me. You have a truck, you have some supplies, you get some food in there, you set up in basically a gas station corner lot, right? And you're in business. That's just one example of just how entrepreneurship is just rampant down here in Houston. And it's one of those kind of what I call the bootstrap method. It's like very low overhead. So I like the Houston mentality. It attracts people from all over the United States and various ethnic groups as well, which is, to me, familiar. Having grown up in the DC metro area, it's very multicultural, right? I didn't get that as much when I moved to other cities like Atlanta and LA or San Diego I lived in as well, very homogenized in a way. But when I moved to Houston, it brought back some really good feelings of, oh man, this is truly a diverse, multicultural city. Even though it has a cowboy image, it's kind of developed beyond that, right? So I like Houston. It's a good place to raise a family and to lay some roots. And for me personally, who's trying to balance the work, what I call the work-life balance, working and playing, for me, it's highly appealing because we're only, 2 hours nonstop down to Cancun or to that part of Mexico where all the great beaches are, right? So that to me is, super plus because I love to travel and just get, my beach therapy on, just relax and unwind. And so I can come back here and get my work on and not be, super stressed. So it's a very centralized location, which I really like, to all of Central America for that matter.
Yeah, sure thing. I mean, you knocked it out of the park there. I mean, say no more when you talk about, getting to the beach quickly. I mean, you
Yeah.
want to hang out in New Orleans, you want to drive to Austin, pretty easy drive there, whatever you want. I love the city of Houston, and I love the location too.
Yeah. Yeah. And obviously a lot of people do too. I'm moving here in droves, which funny enough is one of the reasons why prices are going up at the rate they are, right? Because we're having people come from California who, we're selling their $1 million homes and can afford, anything here in Houston, probably 2 or 3 properties for what they got for the sale of their home. So there's some, artificial increase that's happening because of the influx of people come from other areas, right? So some of that is driving the prices up as well.
Sure thing. Absolutely. And you opened the door on something interesting as well as kind of the affordability and the pricing. And you also talked a little bit earlier about kind of having that self-awareness of knowing, hey, where do I stand? Maybe some last parting words, any sort of advice to a first-time home buyer or someone who's just looking to learn more about mortgages?
Yeah. First word of advice is, start a budget, right? I mean, you have to know exactly what you have coming in and what you have going out on a monthly basis. That's paramount. Take advantage of your annual credit reports every year. You need to comb through that credit report every year and make sure there's nothing that's not supposed to be on there. because you can get it challenged with no cost at all and get it removed. Make sure your credit is always in a good standing. Typically for us, we want to see 620 and up on average. Okay, credit score. So know where that credit score is, know what your credit report is looking like. And then thirdly, know what it is you're looking for in a home, especially if you're using a first-time home buyer as an example, Aaron. Know that it is a tool. It's an asset tool. So use it as such. It should be a stepping stone. If you're a first-time home buyer, this should not be, the home necessarily that you're, getting married with a spouse and raising children in. This might be just a 3, 4, maybe 10-year commitment or whatever the case. And then you rent that out or sell it, right? And it becomes an asset class for you. And you can get into something that's maybe, an upgraded house, if you will, based upon your income streams going up, right? So, and know that you need to, even though there are assistance programs in the state of Texas for first-time home buyers, it's very good programs that we are aware of and participate in. Always know that lenders want to know that you have skin in the game at all times. So be prepared to have some savings in place for either down payment and or closing costs, but most importantly, for reserves. So when you get in that home, if God forbid something happens, you're on tough times or you lose a job or transition between jobs, you need to be able to cover that mortgage payment, right? So you need to have at least ideally 2-3 months of reserves at any given time, just for emergency purposes or God forbid repairs, stuff like that, right? So just be financially prepared. That's it. It's a big investment, so you want to be ready.
Absolutely, Joseph. Stellar advice there. Greatly appreciate that. Maybe someone's in the Houston area, they're close by, maybe they're in another part of the country, or they just want to get a hold of you and chat with you about mortgages, real estate, or, anything else Houston related. Where can we find you?
So you can find me on all social media platforms, Facebook, LinkedIn, Instagram. My tag is Lending by Joseph, and that's also my website, lendingbyjoseph.com. And I'm also licensed in Louisiana, California, and Florida. So I can personally service all those states. I can originate loans in all those states. And for the states that I'm not licensed in personally, I can pass it off to a teammate with my company NEXA that can actually take care of it for them.
Absolutely. And it's not only, it's great that you can not only take care of the state of Texas, but there are a few other options as well. So that's always nice to add to your arsenal.
Yes, sir. Yeah, because that can be a very inviting thing for somebody, as far as opening up investment opportunities. You might not be able to get something of a good price here in Houston that you might be looking for, but going to other states, you might be able to find a sweet deal.
Yep. Ain't that the truth? Absolutely, Joseph. I've greatly appreciated, our time together, you shedding light on, what you do, a bit about your background, a bit of advice, on mortgages. And, thank you so much for coming on the show. It's been a pleasure.
Man, it's great being here, Aaron. Thank you for having me as a guest. And, hopefully I provided some insight to anybody who watches this.
Absolutely. Thanks so much, Joseph.
Thank you, Aaron.